in this fourth iteration. We added a map activity. We got the debug key set up in the code. We added a map view. We used a geocoder to find an address, and then we displayed that address on the map activity. And then, of course, we also returned it to the calling activity. And then what we'll do next time is actually save that in the database on a task, so that when you start up, you will have all that location information saved, and then we'll get the device's location, which will allow us to filter tasks that are have a location to some sort of radius that's nearby us. I think I talked ahead a little bit there. I'll talk to that again in a second. But if you want to play around with the code that we have here, you can go get the code that we've provided for this week, and here's a possible little homework exercise that you could do. So right now, once you add an address, you're pretty much set with that address. You can't go edit it on a task, so you basically have to cancel out of adding that task and then go back. So what you could do instead is on the Add Task screen, you could add an Edit Location button if there is an address, and then once it's clicked, send the existing address from the task into the Add Location activity. Modify the add location activity, and I'll show you how to do that in a second here. This sending data. We've seen how to return data from activities. This I will show you in a second how to send data to activities. So you can modify the add location activity to, if it started up with an address, to default the map to have a dot on the screen for that address, so everything is back in position like it was when the user first picked that address. And then go through the same process as before, search for a new address, get a different overlay shown on the screen, and then return that address back to the calling activity. So you could edit the choice that you've made in the address that you chose. So the way that you send extras, just like we've already seen, returning extras, is that you create an intent, and you can put an extra into the intent, and you need to use the same key value type of a setup for extras, and then you start activity for a result, just like you've done before. And then inside the edit location map activity, or wherever you choose to do that, you could create a new activity if you want. On the onCreate, you will get the intent, which is a method on any activity, which will get access to the instance of the intent that created it. Then you get a parcelable extra out of that intent, and that will give you the address that just got passed in. And all this will be this code will be listed on the forums so that you can see how this goes. And if you choose to do a little bit more work to understand Android better, that is a good way to do it. And then, like I said, next week we'll save that location on a task, and then make a way to filter all the tasks that we know about by the proximity to the device's current location. All right, so that's this week. Let's take some questions.
All right, we have a question from the audience I'm going to start with.
We'll start out with a simple one. Where's the shadow in your actual code running? I didn't see the shadow. I know where the code is. Did it work?
Yeah, so I mean, we just set the offset to 1. Let's make it more extreme and then run it, and then see the shadow for sure. And while this is running, let's take maybe another question to compress things a little bit.
If you hit the back key after when you go to the page where you're supposed to type in the location and you hit the back key instead, is that the same thing? You'll get like a null result as if you had typed in something that did not result in any addresses?
Well, just this code will never be called. Add task activity okay. You know what? That's a good question. Let me answer that question by using the debugger in just a second. Let's put something in to see the shadow. So 1600 amp Parkway. And also tune in next week when I use more interesting addresses. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in slowly for Elizabeth, and there we can see the shadow. 10 pixels offset instead of just 1. That makes sense?
Yeah, 'cause it really looks like it's floating.
Yeah, it's floating way the heck up there. And you could animate that too. I'll leave that as an exercise to the viewer as well, but you could animate that to kind of bounce into place, you know. All right, so the other question was, what if I just back out of this without setting up use location? So what I will do to prove what happens there is I will double click line 52 of onActivityResult, and now I have a debug point there. I can go into DDMS, and even though I didn't start up this application running in debug mode, I can go into the DDMS mode of Eclipse, or DDMS perspective of Eclipse, and if it decides to start up, I get the little spinny beach ball. Come on, Eclipse, don't fail me now. All right, here we go. I can go to Task Manager, click on it here in the list of devices, and then click the debug button, and now all of a sudden I can connect to it with a debugger. And what I'll do is, let me do it two ways. So if I say use this location, then I can prove that the debug point works. Now I'm switching, it popped up the debugger, and it should hop into the code any second now. Did I say no or cancel? Oh, I got spinny beach ball again. Okay, so now I'm in the code and onActivityResult. And you can see request code is 0, which is what we kicked off here. The result code is -1, which is okay. And then there's this data, this intent, and it has some extras. The toString is telling me. Okay, so then if I continue on the debugger, let things run the way they're running, back out of here, say add task, say add location to task, and then I click back, onActivityResult is called. The request code is 0, because that's what we started off with, but the result code is now 0, and that's not result OK. That is, I think, result canceled. So that passes through our check here and doesn't ever call this setup that we've got here on line 53, and then calls up to super. So what you could do is check for result canceled instead of OK, and then say, hey, you canceled out. How am I supposed to do anything? Or just let it fail silently like we have here. And hopefully that answers the question by doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and I remember you had set it up specifically to return result OK in that one method. If you don't do that, is the default value cancel?
Good question. I'm not sure.
Okay. Probably in the documentation.
Here, let me pull up the docs. Yeah, so those are the two options that I get. Slowly zooming in, result canceled or result OK. I can choose between those two. So I could fake a cancel as well. Or maybe let the user cancel in a different way. But still handle it back on this activity. All right, any other questions?
Yeah. We have a question from Rich, who asks if the geocoder that service that comes from Google, can we also plug in other geocoder services? And I remember you did talk about this a couple of sessions ago. You said there are other options. I think OpenStreetMaps or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you can get access to a jar basically that has APIs, or build something yourself that calls out to another API, yeah, have at it. But you'll have to build that yourself. Or I know there's other third-party vendors of mapping tools for Android. There's actually one located here in Denver that I'm forgetting the name of. I've met them at 360 iDev, which is an iPhone conference. So I know there are other providers out there. Yeah, you could use those, but I mean, it's just if you can get access to the code, have at it.
All right. I'm going to let Sarah and Ruth ask a couple of questions, and then I wanted to point out that a couple people had asked for reminders on how to get the Google APIs into Eclipse. So if we don't have time for that today, we'll get to that in the forums for sure. So, Sarah.
Is there a place in the code where you can specify the default map mode, such as terrain mode or satellite mode, when it gets displayed?
Yes. So when we set up the map here in setup views, I say set built-in zoom controls to true, and I could also say map view dot here's all the list of things that I can do. A bunch of things. It's probably a setter, so I'll say set. Basically the answer is yes, but proving it here. Yep, somewhere in this list. Set satellite. So I could do set satellite on, and then have satellite view. Or set street view, and then have street view on.
Okay, so I have a ton of questions. This is Ruth speaking. If the phone doesn't have network connectivity, will Google Map even display? Does it need to pull from the wire every time?
I don't know what the caching policy for the map view is. If this is the first time you've seen a map, then it probably doesn't have anything cached. Or maybe it has that first view cache, I don't know. But most likely, yes. Most likely it will be, I mean, the real answer is that, yeah, it'll be pretty unusable.
Okay, is accuracy returned? I know Google Maps has some issues with Chinese addresses not always lining up.
I don't know. That might be part of the address API. Yeah, you could look at the methods on address. That might be one of the things that's returned on an address.
Okay, somebody said that the map only redraws when the button is clicked, and when he zooms, it gets blurry. Is there an on-zoom event of some sort, or?
The map is blurry?
Yes, it only redraws when the button is clicked, and when it zooms, it gets blurry. And the question is, what part did I miss? Is there an on-zoom event?
I don't know if there's an on-zoom event, but it should redraw. I bet its network connection is just slow. I think you may have seen that.
It usually gets blurry in Google Maps until it resolves, and then it resolves higher resolution. It just usually does it pretty quickly, and if you have a bad connection, maybe it's just doing it slowly.
I bet that's just his connection. As to there being an on-zoom event, I don't know offhand if you can get access to when somebody zooms or not. So to answer that, my Eclipse is really running slow here, but I've opened up in the hierarchy the address class, and you can see a lot of things about the address and thoroughfare, sub-thoroughfare, sub-locality, a lot of things. Has latitude, has longitude. I'm looking for what would it be, like a accuracy. I don't see an accuracy on the result.
Okay. Why does the emulator display the Pakistan location every time it restarts? Why not the Google headquarters, since that was last displayed?
It wasn't the last displayed. Remember, the first thing I did was move over to Pakistan. So it was going to the last one that I had displayed.
How can I change the zoom level by geo result? Example, when user inputs California, zoom out to state level.
Then you can use the map controller to set the zoom.
So you'd have to detect whether the address is at the state level or at the street level or whatever, and then just do the corresponding zoom level.
Well, yeah, you'd have to, I guess, parse at the. I don't know if address tells you that. You might have to do a little bit of thinking in code to see if there was a street level component to the address. That might be what you get. But I don't know what would happen if you just search for California. If you get an address with no street level and just a geo position of I don't know, the middle of the state or the something. But you might have to do some smart code to figure out what zoom level is right based on the address that comes back, and I'm not quite sure how to do that offhand.
All right.
Are there other get extra methods? If so, how do you know which one to use? Since you called set extra, not set parcelable extra.
So what I do inside, did I ever set an extra? Where did I set an extra? Put extra. So what I do is I don't ever implement parcelable just because there's a lot of stuff in there, and I've never needed to. But you usually need to if you're going to be passing. If you know you want to be passing data between applications, like with a content provider or something, or sort of saving those off as classes to the file system or something. There's a way to save parcelable data that way. So I always know that any of my complex classes are going to be serializable. But what you can do is figure out what the compiler thinks, because that's the important thing, by hovering over the method in Eclipse or something like that, and you can see that by putting in address, it's calling the method signature of, as I zoom in a little bit here, it's calling the put extra with the signature of string and parcelable. So it's telling you what you did there, what you actually did. You know what I mean?
Yep.
2 more quick questions. Is there a 3D Draw API as well?
Yeah, there's OpenGL libraries available.
And then, because you're in Denver, do you have private lessons?
I doubt it. I doubt that I'd be interested in doing that. Yeah, I doubt that I'd be interested in private lessons, but I don't know, when we could get together and talk about. Why don't you connect with me on Twitter? I have an outstanding invitation from someone else from the first class.
for beer.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to set up a local Android user group, Tony, or something.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness,
Like a
yeah.
fan club.
Sounds like a lot of work. But, I don't want a fan club, but yeah, it would be good if there's a lot of interested people in Android to set up something like a user group. Maybe we could meet at Effective UI, my office, or something like that. Yeah, if there's interest for that, let me know.
All right, we have one more question from the audience, and then we'll wrap up because we're already 15 minutes over time. So hang out if you can online, because we're going to do a quick poll at the end. So don't go away yet if you can hang out for a couple more minutes.
In the address overload. No, where was it?
He missed the front of the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. In the draw method of your overlay, where you actually were doing the 2D graphics, where is it? There it is. Do you know what the super does, or if anything?
That's a good question.
You know, it's sort of from a user's perspective. I'm sure it's or anything. Maybe it doesn't.
By default, draws nothing.
By default, draws nothing. Oh.
Yeah, so I guess I don't really need to call super here. Should work out fine.
Cool.
Might be good form to put it in there, though.
Yeah, I mean, I always default to calling super, unless I know there's a good reason not to.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I want to give Tony a quick round of applause, and then if you can stay, we're going to ask two poll questions. So thank you, Tony. We really appreciate your class today.